The twin suns hung low over dust water, draping the outpost in amber haze. The saloon, a weather-worn building with a flickering neon sign, was the only sign of life for miles. Its wooden walls groaned under the weight of 100 different stories, though none told louder than the silence of its bartender. Jax Callahan stood behind the bar, polishing a cracked glass with the precision of a man who needed routine more than rest. His movements were deliberate, each one betraying years of training that didn't belong to a man who served drinks for a living. A fading scar ran down the side of his neck, disappearing into the collar of his shirt. He rarely spoke unless spoken to, and even then, his words were rationed like water in the dustlands. The saloon held its usual suspects, local miners, a pair of off-world freighter pilots, and a drunk trader passed out in the corner booth. They drank quietly, speaking in hushed tones, the way all people do when they've seen too much of the galaxy and trust too little of it. Overhead, fans rotated with lazy rhythm, stirring the dry heat and the scent of synthetic whiskey. Then the doors slammed open, letting in a gust of grit and 4 armored figures that didn't belong here. They walked with the entitled confidence of predators, their movements sleek and too synchronized to be casual. The green tint of their skin gleamed under the dim lights, helmets tucked under their arms. Alien, yes, but not unfamiliar. Dustwater had seen its share of off-worlders. What set these 4 apart was the weight they carried, of weapons, of money, of reputation. Jax didn't flinch. He never did. He reached for another glass and began wiping it clean. The tallest of them stepped forward, grinning. "Bartender," he said, voice slick and cold. "What's the best poison in this pit?" "Depends what you're trying to kill," Jax replied, placing 4 glasses on the counter without being asked. Laughter erupted among them, sharp and too loud for the room. Their leader tapped his knuckle on the bar. "I like him. Knows his place." Jax didn't respond. He poured the drinks, amber liquid sloshing just short of the rim. The slavers took their seats, casually laying sidearms on the wood. Jax's eyes flicked toward them once, quickly, the way a man might glance at a snake and choose not to disturb it. As they drank, the room grew quieter. Even the music, an old terrestrial ballad playing softly from a wall-mounted speaker, seemed to lower itself. The slavers spoke in a language that shifted between galactic common and guttural alien dialects. Jax didn't need to understand every word. Tone was universal. "2 more runs like this," said one, "and I'm done. Retiring rich on Eridani 4. The little ones are the best cargo. Easy to transport. High markup. Especially the humans," another added. "They cry a lot. Buyers love that. Makes them look more helpless." Jax's knuckles turned white around the neck of the bottle he was holding. He placed it down slowly, careful not to make sound. "Don't forget the kid we snagged at the Hydro Market," said a third. "Big eyes, dark hair. She screamed something in English before we put her under." Their laughter bounced off the walls, but it didn't reach the bartender. Jax had gone still, so completely that even the fan above him seemed to pause. At the far end of the saloon, the door creaked open again, this time quietly. A man stumbled in, wrapped in desert cloth, goggles around his neck, and skin burned by the twin suns. He moved like a drunk, but carried the urgency of someone with too much to say. He made a beeline for the bar, weaving between tables and stopping just short of Jax. "They took them," he whispered, breath hot and ragged. "The kids. Saw them loading 2, maybe 3, onto a black hauler outside gate 6. No tags. Just vanished." Jax blinked. Once. Slowly. His voice was flat, mechanical. "When?" "Half an hour. Maybe less. One was your girl. I'm sure of it." Behind him, one of the slavers chuckled, not even trying to lower his voice. "Looks like someone lost a toy." Jax turned around. It was the first real movement he'd made in minutes. Blood stained the front of his shirt, fresh from a reopened wound beneath the ribs, one that had never quite healed from a decade-old battle. His eyes were calm, too calm, like deep water with something dangerous just below the surface. He stepped around the bar. The saloon's regulars shifted in their seats, uneasy. They had seen Jax break up brawls before. They had never seen him move like this. The slavers didn't rise. They didn't have to. They were armed, armored, and sure of their superiority. The leader smiled, lazy and slow. "You looking for something, bartender?" Jax stopped a few feet from him. "Yeah," he said. "I'm looking for whoever took my kids." The saloon went dead silent. The slaver's smile faltered just a little. "Careful now. You don't want to make accusations you can't back up." "I don't make accusations," Jax replied. "I make graves." The tension cracked like dry leather. The slavers reached for their weapons, but Jax was already moving. His hand snatched a hidden blade from inside his coat, slamming it into the table just inches from the leader's hand. He didn't need to fight them now. That would be suicide. He needed information, and he needed time. The slavers froze, caught off guard by the audacity, by the calmness in his voice, and maybe, just maybe, by the flicker of something else in his eyes. Not rage, not fear, purpose. Jax leaned in close, his voice a whisper made of stone. "I know what you are. I know where you operate. I'll find the hauler. I'll find the children. And when I do, you'll pray the suns burn you to ash before I get there." He turned, walked out the saloon doors, and into the blazing light without looking back. The wind howled behind him, kicking dust into the air like a curtain falling between acts. Inside, no one moved. The slavers stared after him, confused. One reached for his comlink. Another poured another drink, hands shaking. Outside, Jax stepped into the heat and looked toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond the dunes, his children were waiting. Somewhere, a ship was already in the sky, carrying pieces of his world away. He had buried a version of himself long ago, a soldier, a killer, a man who thought vengeance was a dead-end road. But the galaxy had a way of digging up the past. Today, it had handed him a shovel. Jax Callahan walked toward his bike, footsteps steady. Not fast, not frantic, just steady. He wasn't rushing. He was returning. The wind howled as Jax rode into the canyon, the hover bike cutting a clean line through the red dust of Dustwater's outskirts. Twin moons now hung in the sky, replacing the brutal light of day with a silvery chill. He didn't mind the cold. Cold meant clarity. He kept his eyes forward, knuckles white on the controls, the landscape blurring past. Every mile put him closer to the people who had taken his children, and further from the version of himself he'd spent years trying to become. He reached the ridge before midnight. The bike hissed as it settled to a hover above the rocks, the engine winding down into silence. Jax climbed off and crouched behind a rusted boulder, watching the thin trail of heat signatures snaking through the valley below. He had tracked the hauler's movement via his stolen comm frequency. The slavers were sloppy, confident, overconfident. Behind him, a low metallic whine approached. He didn't flinch. The noise belonged to a boxy, carbon-score drone that hovered unevenly through the air, trailing sparks from one stabilizer. "You're late," Jax said. The drone blinked a single green light. "Technically, I'm decommissioned." Jax allowed himself a faint smile. "That you are, KIP. Still running." "Define running," the drone replied in a clipped tone. "One stabilizer is offline, voice module stuck in sarcasm mode, and I'm currently held together by scrap wire and spite." "Good. That'll do." They descended from the ridge in silence. Jax on foot now, KIP gliding behind, its optics adjusting in real time to the shifting darkness. The slaver camp wasn't large, 5 or 6 tents, a couple of armored transports, one of them matching the description of the black hauler. No children in sight. He needed help. At the base of the ridge, a dilapidated outpost clung to the canyon wall. Inside, Rin Varick, a half-mechanic, half-smuggler, all trouble, leaned back in a chair held together by hope and rust. He looked up and the door opened and smirked. Well, if it isn't the bartender turned ghost. Jax didn't waste time. I need tools. Weapons. Power cells. Something with punch. Rin scratched the edge of his horn with a wrench. Last time I gave you tools, 3 bounty hunters ended up in the hospital. They walked away. They were lucky. And you were drunk. Jax stepped forward, unbuckling the thick leather strap from across his chest. He laid it on the table. 4 Galactic-grade energy cartridges, pristine, rare. Rin whistled. That's not local currency. No, Jax said. It's war currency. You looking to start one? I'm looking to end one. Rin stared at him for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. What do you need? 2 hours later, Jax stood outside, rearmed. His old coat was gone, replaced by body armor, so worn it could have been museum grade. An old, scarred plasma revolver rested on his thigh, its grip molded to his hand like it remembered him. Kip had received a new patch and was flying with a little less wobble. Rin handed Jax a small detonator with a crooked grin. Remote charges. Small boom. Surgical. You still remember how to throw. Jax's voice was flat. I only miss when I want to. They set out together. Rin's sandcrawler was slow but armored, designed to survive Dustwater's worst. Jax sat in the passenger seat, rifle resting across his lap, watching the terrain scroll past as KIP flew recon ahead. Occasionally, the drone sent flickers of data back. Body heat patterns, vehicle logs, proximity scans. They're camped for the night, KIP reported. Energy signatures low. Minimal guard rotation. They think they're safe, Rin said. They're wrong, Jax replied. As they approached the outcrop overlooking the camp, Jax climbed atop the crawler and set up a scope. The black hauler was parked near the center. No children in sight, but signs of containment. Heat vents, magnetic locks, pulse barriers. He adjusted the focus, noting the guard positions. For visible, likely more inside. No heavy weapons, but personal shields on 2 of them. Standard issue. They're not selling them here, Rin said, pointing to the hauler's cargo port. Too discreet. This is a layover. They're moving them, Jax muttered. Probably tonight. He checked the time. 2 hours to local dawn. Slavers like to move at first light. Less interference, better line of sight in open sky. He tapped the side of his visor, overlaying a grid onto the valley. KIP, he said, drop a jammer drone on the perimeter. I want 0 outgoing signals. Kip beeped. On it. But I'll need a recharge after. Don't expect miracles. Just a clean silence. Rin pulled a pair of goggles over his eyes and slung a compact blaster onto his back. You planning to talk this out? Jax checked his sidearm, then slid a knife into his boot. I'm planning to listen until they stop lying. They advanced under cover of dark rock and scrub, the chill air dry and biting. Jax moved like smoke, silent and without hesitation. This wasn't the bartender anymore. This was the soldier, the ghost from a dozen war zones, the man who once cleared an enemy bunker with nothing but a wrench and a broken comlink. They reached the edge of the camp just as KIP launched its jammer. A ripple of static washed across the valley. The hum of comm towers died. Lights flickered. One of the guards turned in confusion and fell silently as Jax's knife took him in the throat. Rin moved in sync, blaster pulsing twice. 2 more dropped. No alarms. No cries. The 4th tried to run, but Jax was faster. He caught him by the collar, slammed him against the hauler's hull, and drove a fist into his gut. The slaver wheezed, dropping his weapon. Jax grabbed his chin and forced eye contact. Where are they? Who? My children. The slaver's face twisted in pain, then fear. Auction house. Xyrex Prime. We just hold them here, just until pickup. Jax stared for a second longer, then dropped him. Alive? He asked. The slaver nodded frantically. Yes. Crated. Med-sedated. Standard protocol. Jax turned to Rin. Check the hauler. Rin climbed aboard, cutting through the cargo door with a fusion blade. Inside, they found rows of containment pods, 8 total. 2 were human. One of them had a cracked ID tag with a name burned into the side. Lila Callahan. Jax stepped back. For a moment, the weight of it hit him like a freight hauler. His kids were here, close. Alive, but not safe. They haven't moved them yet, Rin said. We got time. No, Jax said. We've got a target. Behind him, the slaver groaned, still alive. Give me everything, Jax demanded. Route. Pilot name. Time of transfer. The slaver babbled, desperate to save his own skin. Jax memorized it all. Then he turned away. You're letting him live? Rin asked. No, Jax said quietly. I'm letting him run. He'll warn them. Make them nervous. Kip hovered close. That's not very strategic. Jax looked up, eyes cold and resolute. No, it's personal. The twin moons dipped below the horizon as the first hints of sunrise painted the sky. The slavers wouldn't wait, and now neither would he. He stepped aboard the hauler, his children just meters away in stasis. He couldn't wake them yet, not safely. Not here, but he would. Soon. The engines flared to life. They were going to Xyrex, and this time, he wasn't coming to ask questions. The stars over Xyrex Prime didn't twinkle. They pulsed. Artificial, synthetic, engineered into a perfect simulation of a night sky. Beautiful in the same way a polished weapon was beautiful. Jax Callahan watched the sky through the reinforced viewport of the stolen hauler, his eyes fixed but his mind turning over the pieces of a plan that hadn't yet fully formed. The city below was a monolith of chrome and darkness, neon veins pulsing through its arteries. Towers rose like claws, stretching toward the upper atmosphere. Xyrex wasn't a planet so much as a trading post masquerading as civilization. It was where people came to sell anything that shouldn't be sold. Life, death, secrets, children. He stood in the cockpit, one hand resting lightly on the throttle, the other on the comms array. His children were still in the back, locked in cryostasis. They would stay that way until the job was done. He wouldn't risk waking them. Not yet. Not when the storm was still building. Docking request approved. Came a female voice through the channel, static-laced and indifferent. Bay 46. Keep your cargo sealed. No questions. No delays. Understood, Jax replied. He guided the hauler down, landing on the outskirts of the district called the Sink, a cesspool of smuggling, trade, and shadows. The air smelled like coolant and old blood. Jax exited the ship with his coat drawn tight, face half obscured by a respirator. Rin waited at the foot of the ramp, leaning on his blaster staff. You sure you want to walk in the front door? Rin asked. I want them to know I'm here. Rin grunted. Remind me never to owe you a favor. The two moved through the alleyways, keeping low, keeping sharp. Kip hovered overhead, silent now, optics flicking constantly as it scanned for threats. They passed under a gang banner, red cloth painted with a stylized chain, and approached a checkpoint flanked by 2 armored thugs. One stepped forward. Business. Selling, Jax said. Product. Human cargo. 2 units. Unmarked. High quality. The guard looked him up and down, suspicion flickering behind mirrored lenses. Authorization. Jax tapped his belt, transmitting a forged code Rin had scrambled together during the flight. The guard device chirped. He waved them through. Inside, the auction house wasn't a building so much as a spire. Tall, narrow, segmented by security checkpoints and biometric locks. Jax had been here before. Years ago. Back when he wore a different face, carried a different name. Back when he worked for the people he now hunted. They passed through the lower levels quickly, holding pens, negotiation chambers, and glass rooms where buyers previewed merchandise like fine wine. The atmosphere was sterile, cold, a mockery of commerce. No screaming, no chains, just quiet transactions. At the core of it all stood the auction director, a tall Sothri named Velrix, dressed in crimson robes that shimmered with integrated tech. His face was long, bird-like, eyes shielded by gold-rimmed lenses. He turned as Jax entered, his mouth pulling into a dry smile. New seller. Jax nodded. Urgent transfer. Special cargo. Velrix motioned to a scanning station. Show me. Rin handed over a data slate. Velrix studied it with mild interest. Unregistered children. Human. Female and male. Ages approximated at 7 and 9. No biometric records. Clean. Jax kept his tone flat. I need payment fast. Leaving the sector in 12 hours. Velrix tilted his head. That can be arranged. The auction queue is full, but exceptions can be made. There's always demand for innocence. Jax didn't blink. Price. 50,000 per unit. More if we verify health and pliability. Jax stepped closer. I want to see the staging area. I want to know where they'll be. Velrix's smile thinned. Precaution. Investment. The Sothri studied him for a beat too long, then gestured to a side corridor. Follow me. Jax walked the corridors, each step a deliberate act of self-control. Every sensor, every guard, every overhead drone was a reminder that violence here would end badly for everyone. But the layout, the access points, the movement patterns, all of it was feeding into a growing map in Jax's head. They reached a tall security door. Velrix placed a hand on the control panel, and the door hissed open to reveal a clean, glass-walled chamber filled with cryopods. Children slept inside them. Dozens. Different species, different ages. Some clutched toys frozen in their little hands. Others lay still, curled up, alone even in sleep. Jax spotted his own almost instantly. Lila. Her hair was tied in a simple braid. Her brow furrowed, even in stasis, like she was dreaming of things she shouldn't have seen. Beside her, Terran, smaller, arms crossed over his chest. They looked unbroken, but Jax knew better. Stasis didn't just pause the body. It paused the pain. He stepped back, just far enough to keep the rage from clouding his judgment. Velrix watched him. You seem invested. Jax forced a shrug. I know it sells. Velrix nodded, apparently satisfied. We'll begin processing in 2 hours. Payment upon completion. You'll receive credentials at the upper desk. They walked back in silence. Rin joined Jax outside the staging area, a question in his eyes. Everything good? He asked. Jax didn't answer immediately. Then, we hit them in 3 hours. 3? You said 2. They'll prep the pods, transfer them to outbound docks. We intercept there. Cleaner extraction. Rin nodded. What about extraction team? Jax pulled a tiny comm chip from his pocket. Already called in. One favor left from the war. They'll arrive just before it all burns. Rin raised a brow. You always plan for fire? I don't start anything I don't plan to finish. They returned to the hauler in silence, each man lost in his own thoughts. Kip updated the layout schematics as they walked, recording movement patterns, mapping alternate exits. Everything was coming together. In the cargo hold, Jax stood over the cryopods. He didn't touch them. He didn't speak. He simply stared. His children. So close. Rin leaned against the wall. You sure you can do this without losing control? Jax turned, slowly. No. but I'm sure I have to. Kip buzzed, interrupting them. Incoming scan ping from the tower. They're confirming sale ID. Jax nodded. Good. Let them. Let them think this is just another trade. He sat down, loading his rifle with practiced efficiency. Each round was non-lethal. Stunners. Smoke. Disruptors. Not because he was soft, but because if anything went wrong, he'd need them alive for leverage. Kip hovered closer. What's the plan if we get separated? You get the kids out, Jax said. Rin covers the upper corridor. I'll take the lifts. And Velrix? Rin asked. Jax's eyes turned hard. He doesn't leave the building. Outside, the lights of Zyrex began to dim, signaling night shift lockdown. In 3 hours, the auction would begin. The children would be moved. And Jax Callahan would no longer be a bartender, a ghost, or a name whispered in anger. He would be something else entirely. He would be justice. The elevator descended in silence, a humming shaft of motion lined with glass and gold trim. Jax stood inside, armor weighed down with concealed weapons, breath slow and measured. The countdown had begun, and in moments the auction floor would ignite with the worst kind of spectacle, buyers bidding on lives like they were trinkets. He didn't flinch as the doors opened. The lobby was full of movement, a slow, luxurious swirl of beings wrapped in finery and masks. Wealth disguised as culture. At the center, the auctioneer's dais pulsed with holographic displays, flashing stats, and fabricated health records. Bidders sat in tiered rows, murmuring behind filters. None of them saw Jax for what he was. Not yet. He passed among them unnoticed. Another seller perhaps. Another vulture drawn to this carnival of cruelty. But he was counting guards, watching doors, tracking timing. The moment would be precise. Above, on the third level, Rin was already in position. Kip buzzed lightly in Jax's comm. Auction in progress. Your kids are next. 5 minutes until the stage. Jax's jaw clenched. Begin. Atop the dais, Velrix smiled, basking in the attention. Our next lot, he announced smoothly, comes from the outer reach. 2 human siblings, unmarked, sedated, and bonded. Rare. Unclaimed. The girl shows signs of high cognitive flexibility. The boy, physical adaptability. Strong stock. Lila's pod rose on a lift, bathed in soft blue light. Terrence followed seconds later. The crowd stirred, excited by the rarity. Humans were difficult to procure off-world. The price would soar. Jax stepped forward, drawing no weapon. Yet, Velrix continued, opening bid. His voice cut off. All at once, the lights snapped to crimson. The air thrummed with the crackle of localized EMPs. Kip's jammers flooded the internal systems. Security drones dropped from the ceiling like toys losing charge. Jax moved. He leapt onto the stage before the first guard could react, ripping the stunner from his side holster and firing twice. Blue arcs danced across the room, dropping 2 sentries to the ground. Shut it down. Velrix screamed, but no one listened. Panic overtook order. The buyers scrambled from their seats, confused, afraid, exposed. Jax reached the cryopods, slamming a security bypass into the lock. Lila's pod hissed open first. Cold air spilled out. She didn't move, still under sedation. Terran followed, chest rising shallowly, eyes flickering. He cradled them both against him, protective, silent. Velrix lunged with a concealed blade, but Jax had already seen it. He caught the Sothery mid-swing, wrenching his arm backward until bones snapped. Velrix shrieked. Jax threw him off the dais. Kip! Jax barked. Extraction team inbound, the drone crackled. 2 minutes. Rooftop. Jax looked up, glass ceiling reinforced. Too thick for standard explosives. Rin, he said. Already on it. A second later, a sonic blast rocked the building. The ceiling shattered inward, glass raining like stars. A dropship roared into place, side hatch open, ropes unspooled. The pilot, a grizzled woman in a patched-up uniform, shouted, "Move!" Jax lifted Lila and Taryn into a harness, locking them to the first rope. He slapped the signal panel. The winch began to rise. Children first. Always. A squad of auction guards stormed through the main entry, pulse rifles drawn. Rin, crouched on the third tier, opened fire. His shots were clean, calculated, non-lethal but decisive. Jax joined the firefight, laying down suppressive rounds while his kids rose to safety. Kip buzzed erratically above him. Back up en route. They've locked the perimeter. They're going to try to trap us in. Let them try, Jax said. He bolted for the second rope, grabbing the line with one hand, the stunner in the other. He fired twice more, then activated the winch. Rin sprinted toward the final rope as plasma blasts scorched the floor behind him. The three of them rose in tandem, hoisted toward the shattered rooftop. A guard aimed upward, preparing to fire at the escaping children. Jax twisted, let go of the rope just long enough to slam into the shooter mid-jump. They tumbled together, crashing into a marble pillar. Jax stood first. The guard didn't. Bleeding from his temple, breathing hard, he launched back to the rope. The winch groaned but held. Rin grabbed his hand, pulled him into the hatch. The pilot hit the throttle, and the ship peeled off into the storm. Below them, the auction house burned, not from fire but from panic. The lie had cracked. Inside the dropship, Taryn stirred, eyelids fluttering. Lila's fingers curled around Jax's wrist. "Dad," she whispered hoarsely. He touched her cheek. "Yeah, it's me. You came. I never stopped coming." They flew in silence for a while, the stars wide open in all directions. Rin pulled off his helmet, wiping sweat from his brow. "Well, that was terrifying." Jax managed a faint smile. "Thanks for coming. You still owe me." "I know." Lila opened her eyes again. "Where are we going?" "Someplace quiet," Jax said. "Someplace they'll never find us." Kip floated near, charred and sparking. "Define quiet, please. Also, I may need a new stabilizer." "Again?" "I'll build you one," Jax said, "after we disappear." They flew until the auction house was no more than a memory and the stars felt clean again. Later, in the safe house Rin had arranged on a cold moon off Xyrex's grid, Jax sat with his children in a quiet room. No weapons, no missions, just stillness. Taryn rested against his shoulder, thumb in mouth. Lila sat on the floor, playing with an old deck of cards KIP had found in a supply crate. "You scared them," she said quietly. "I wanted them to be scared." She looked at him. "Are you going to go after them again?" Jax met her eyes. They were steady, sharp, more than a child should be. "Yes," he said. "I am." "Why?" "Because there are more kids," he said. "Not just mine." She nodded slowly. "Then we'll help." He smiled. "Not yet. First, we heal." Rin walked in with 2 mugs of something warm and bitter smelling. "You get what you came for?" Jax looked at his children. He didn't need to answer, but he did. "Yes." Outside, the stars turned slowly. Somewhere far off, Velrix would be recovering, plotting. The slavers would reorganize. They always did. But now they knew a truth they hadn't believed before. Humans didn't just serve. They fought. And Jax Callahan wasn't finished. Not by a long shot.